Hello and welcome to Practical Intuition with Kay. This is the show where we are always working to help you consult your own heart and choose for yourself what you really want to create in your life and not necessarily what somebody around you is telling you to do. Welcome, welcome. This is episode 403 of the show, and I'm Kay. I am a coach, I'm an artist, I am an adventurer. I'm on this path with you. I am the person, I'm a person who has um, gotten much, much better at, I would say, gotten good at consulting my heart instead of kind of allowing myself to be pushed off my place of center. Um, and that's been a really, really interesting journey. And in fact, that's kind of what today's is about. So I think this is the fourth I think this is the fourth one in a series of five about my learning on the coast to coast journey and I've shared about this before. Like it was almost it was a little bit more than a year before I left to go hike the coast to coast path in northern England, which crosses northern England from the Irish Sea to the North Sea is the direction that I went. Um, a little bit more than a year before I went, I was asked the question, how do you want to feel in a year? And the answer had started really to do with like food, my relationship with food, my relationship with my body. And it ended up being so much deeper. It was like a total identity change. And um, I am a different person now in a very, very good way than I was before. I'm in a way, I've even rediscovered some parts of myself that had been long buried. And so that's been fun too. If you're watching this in YouTube, the image that I chose for my background was of in the Yorkshire Dales, which is the middle of the path. There were these, like the dales themselves are these sort of hills, mountains. I mean, they're not quite as steep or rugged as the Lake District mountains, but they're certainly mountainy, and they're really more like rolling kind of wonderful hills. A lot of farmland in the dales, a lot more farmland than I had seen in the Lake District. And that, I mean, there was a lot of farmland in the Lake District. It's just that in the dales was really where that kind of got rolling. And so in this image, you can see it's really iconic for like these really cool rock walls that people have built. I think they're called dry stone walls, and all the homes are like a lot of the homes anyway. I think all the ones I saw are made of this beautiful Yorkshire stone, and the environment is just crisscrossed with these amazing rock walls and stone homes. And then you'd be up really high, and it would be much more similar to what I think of as the moors. Like I don't know if the dale tops are called moors or not, but that's how it felt to me. And in this particular picture, I actually took it as I was walking. So ahead of me on the path, there were a couple of people, and you can just kind of see the path heading out. And so this was part of my experience of being on this path, of really hiking this path. And I remembered in the last episode, I'd forgotten there was one question that it was a really interesting question to me, and it gets into our conversation today. So I thought I would share about that. So because the last episode, what I did was I wanted to respond here to some questions, really interesting questions I'd received from folks as I was coming home and, you know, having done this trip, having accomplished I mean, pretty big athletic feat, like certainly the biggest thing I've ever undertaken. I hiked 160 miles of a 192-mile path. I did it I had 20 days to do it, and I hiked 17 of those days. And I did the last 11 days in a row, which was pretty exciting. We're talking, I don't know, it was a good athletic feat. I think I in the last 6 months or so, I've learned that I have ADHD. So I've been diagnosed with ADHD, and the once this has come up on my show before, right? So I guess even this is kind of an update about that. Once I got my mind around the idea of like, I've been really feeling very judgmental about myself for having had this, and what did it say about me and what did it mean? And like, I was not feeling it as a superpower, put it that way. And I have come around to, as Janine Halloran, beloved podcast guest, and a very, very dear friend of mine. She's a licensed mental health counselor. She's written some amazing books, best-selling books with very good reason, about coping skills, how to, some great coping skills to have. Hello, Janine, you're like a beloved person in my life. And she all along had been saying, I think ADHD. In fact, her episode of this show on ADHD is called ADHD is Kind of a Superpower. And that was years ago. And I've now come around to seeing it that way. Like this is why I am the way I am. The operating instructions for my brain give me two, like, I almost think of them as unfair advantages. So one is a really deep, strong capacity for focus, right? So ADHD, a lot of times it's looked on as a very easily distractible person. Well, the flip side of that is if I'm easily distracted away from like what somebody wants me to pay attention to, it's because I'm deeply focused on what I want to pay attention to. And so being able to bring that focus beam to where I want it to be, I think it's why I can be such a deep listener. It's why I have such a good capacity for coaching and for art, because I can tune out other things and really concentrate on. I can even shut off parts of my brain that are not helpful in the creation of art or in coaching or in relationships with people. Like I can shut off the subjective part of my brain. That's how you make good art. You don't have a part of your brain that's going, let me do this. I know how to make somebody's eye. I know how to make a tree. And you turn on the part of your brain that doesn't think about things in that logical way, but instead like observes this dark value here, and you put it correspondingly on your paper here, and the light value is the same thing, right? And that's how you make art. And being objective in relationships, being objective in coaching is like such a great place to come from, because you're really serving others in that way. So anyway, ADHD is great for focus. And then the other thing it's great for, it's how it's shown up for me, is in bodily kinesthetic awareness. The sort of hyperactive part of this, like the part that is, high energy, and then the part that is, what's it called? Is it curiosity? Like the part that is sort of about, I can't even remember. Anyway, there's another part of ADHD, and the two of them combined for me make me feel like I do have this deep bodily kinesthetic awareness. And so who else but someone like that would be motivated to walk 160 miles in 20 days, right? Like it takes a special kind of person to want to do that. And I think that the ADHD is in me. That's where that comes from. So anyway, I was asked the question, was I homesick while I was there? I was gone from my family for 3 weeks, 3 solid weeks. And it was really interesting because to have that question in retrospect, looking back on the trek, I was not homesick at all. And that surprised me when that question was asked and I was reflecting on the answer. I was really surprised at how completely not homesick I was. I was in it. I was doing it. It was like being able to run away and just completely self-care, complete self-care. Like I was protected from a lot of things that are my responsibilities at home. I know we've talked about that in an earlier episode of this series. I was able to focus on just the joys of, and the challenges of a long, a really high performance athletic feat. My meals were made for me. My bed was waiting for me each night. All I had to do was get to it. Like, I could not navigate British roads. Like if I'd had to drive, I almost couldn't cross them. Put it this way, once on my trip, I came to an intersection that was like a T intersection where one road runs into another road, right? And there's people turning left and there's people turning right and there's people going straight in both directions. And I was just trying to cross the road and I couldn't do it. I had to retreat back like, I don't know, 100 feet or something like that, cross the road there, and then go back up to this intersection. I could not cross the road. That's how protected I was from like the normal things in life. When like you're in such a rural place that you come to one T junction intersection like on your whole trek, that's pretty cool. So yeah, so I wasn't homesick in the least. I knew I think this is one of the miracles of modern technology, right? Like I could message with my family. Mother's Day happened while I was there, and I was get Ben's a photographer. This is the 26-time winner of the Husband of the Year award, Benjamin Kolp. He's a fabulous photographer, and he took a picture of my favorite tree at our favorite park, and he messaged it to me on Mother's Day, and he said, "Happy Mother's Day." And then when I got home, like right here, that picture is right back there of my favorite tree at Riverbend Farm, because he gave it to me as well, like in person. But I got home for that, so like I was able to message and not like anything I shared, anything they shared was just done with joy. And that was enough. In fact, I was the person who asked me this is one of my best friends from when we were 12 years old, and I was in communication with them too while I was away. And yeah, like it was all about looking forward in a really joyful way. When I got on the plane, I was ready. Like I was so excited to go home and see them and just be with my family again, be with my friends again. Um, but I was not homesick in the least, which again, if I think about it, that really is quite remarkable. What a gift, huh? To give myself to not be, what a gift we can give ourselves to just be joyfully in what we're doing. Think of it as self-care. And then when we return to our loved ones, that's awesome too. So, and that really does bring me into what I wanted to kind of talk about today, which was integrating back into my life. Um, I feel like I've heard that the Odyssey was written. Now it was about somebody going off to war and returning home, so completely different like subject and everything like that. But the sort of the point of the Odyssey, I've heard it said, is it is a story about going out, having things happen, being involved in events away from your home place, and then reintegrating back home, like returning home, being okay again in this landscape. And I vividly remember asking the question, like, I don't know how I'm going to do, like, how am I going to do this? I'm a different person now. Like, I don't, I don't know what's going to happen when I get home. Like, um, will they accept me was almost the feeling. Like, I'm not willing to go back and be that person anymore. Once you've, once the universe has told you that your truth is that you're unconditionally loved and always forgiven, um, I do not want to return to a place where I don't feel unconditionally loved or never forgiven, which was how I had been feeling. And that's a different life when you trust yourself in the way that I had to learn to trust myself on this trip. And what was that going to mean for the people around me who had sort of relied on me to do things and engage in ways that I was no longer going to be doing, that no longer felt like it could be done with integrity, maybe is a good way to say it. So like it really, I shared in the last episode, in episode 402, about discovering my truth and what that really meant for me. And if I'm looking back, like getting home, I think I shared this last time, there was more learning there that hadn't quite happened that had to happen with reentry. And what the first thing it was, well, I will say it was incredibly disorienting. It was a thrill, it was emotional, it was delightful, it was serendipitous, it was wonderful. And it was super disorienting, like because well, I was not willing to engage on things that I had. So my role changed. My roles changed in every area of my life as a mom, as a wife, as a friend, as a daughter, as um a coach, as an artist, even as an adventurer. I've discovered places around me that have been here for the whole time I've been living here for 18 years and I've never been to them. It's like, what? Now I go there every day. And feeling safe to be able to do those things was really uh was really about trusting myself. And what was disorienting for me was I remember, first of all, I remember being really afraid that if I wasn't actually looking at the art I created while I was there, or the pictures that I took, but it was really especially about the art, I would forget. I would forget. I would forget. And it was terrifying to me that I would forget this trip, like that I would forget the lessons or the feelings, that I just somehow would, it would all drain away from me and I wouldn't have it anymore. That was terrifying. Um, and part of trusting myself got to be about like knowing that that's already in me. Like everything I remember, everything I learned can be kept alive because I'm here still. And I'm like, as long if I'm cultivating those um feelings, if I'm spending time in that space every day, like what I literally do now is I open up that archway that I made the painting of. I was sharing in episode 400, the first of this series. That was a literal doorway that I stood in. It is where I located the standing stones from. I was standing in that doorway. And since I've been home, I've been making art of it where the because it was just a ruined nothing, a structure that was nothing but stones that made the shape of a doorway. It was like the coolest thing. And so what I've been doing since I've been home is I've been making art of that, that is, instead of what I could actually see through the doorway, which was like the hills and the sheep and stuff. I've been replacing that with the sky. So like the sky is what's coming through. And every day I've been playing that I step back through that doorway and I'm anywhere I want to be along the coast to coast path. And that's been so helpful and such fun in terms of like being in the my preferred feeling state, like the way I like to feel. I choose it now. Something I was not willing to go back to where like the winds would just blow my emotions in and out, and that felt really unreliable. And so learning I can trust myself and I can choose my feeling state is has been a part of this. Um and it really did start with the truth, but the other thing was the idea of my truth was really really disorienting too, because I started to understand in a way that I hadn't before that like I all of the thoughts, all of the feelings come from within me. Like I am creating my reality in a way that I really hadn't thought of it before. And I remember having this huge, very big fear. And this was over, I would say, the course of a week, where I would think to myself, like, okay, if I'm going to look up at the sky and say thank you to the universe, who am I thanking? Like, I don't understand. Who am I thanking? And what was really interesting, the shift that happened was I started to realize that the universe is not only out there somewhere. Like I don't stop and then the universe begins. The universe is within me. Like, and I think it's really interesting because I've come to see this as it's not a religious thing. Like it's a divinity thing, or it's a which I maybe to somebody they're going to sound the same, but to me you can be of any religion and understand, or no religion, and understand divinity as being within ourselves. And I had not ever thought of that. And I remember talking, one of our kids is really wonderfully spiritual and really, really reflective. And I remember saying in that period of time, I was so disoriented and we were talking and I was like, I don't understand where I end, where the universe begins. I'm trying to see this as within me and I'm having a really hard time doing that. And our son said, you know, like that, even if you have always, even when for someone like us where we've always had a lot of like external sort of sources for things, we've been taught, right, that there's that the source of your soul, the source of your everything is outside of yourself. He was like, it's got to be a huge shift to try and like return that to bring that within yourself. And I remember him saying like, what if you just gave yourself a minute? And I was like, oh yeah, patience. Patience is one of my three feelings words. I bring myself into a patient state every day. And that was such a gift to be able to say to myself, okay, like while you are integrating everything you've learned on this trip, including this, just give yourself some time. Like it'll happen. Just give yourself some time to integrate all of this positive change. And I remember doing a meditation one day or evening, I think it was, because oftentimes it would happen at night. I would be tired and I would be like, oh my gosh, like what is happening? Who am I? And I had this feeling where I really felt it that the universe was not just outside of me and now there was a line and then there was me, but instead that it just flowed within and without. And it was the source. I sort of was able to understand it as the source of my intuition, the universe being within me as well as being outside of me, and the source of my inner wisdom, and to really be able to pay attention to what's going on in here um, feels amazing. And once I was able to incorporate that and like understand that, things got a lot less disorienting. I was like, oh, okay, now I remember who I am. I remember that this is a way, this is I'm myself again, I think is what I would have said it. And maybe did say it at the time, because a lot of this integrating this positive change came from conversations with my coach, for example. It came from walking and hiking and doing the kind of moving meditations that I really love to do, and having conversations with myself and really just, integrating all this positive change. So in those ways, like reentry was really interesting, disorienting. Then I sort of figured it out. And then another thing that I kind of wanted to address in this reentry was about wayfinding. So um, I started the trip not understanding what a challenge wayfinding was going to be. I've said this every episode I've talked about this, right? Like there were very few signs. There was very little trail markers. I mean, there were basically almost no, well, almost no trailblazes. I mean, really, especially in the Lake District, there was many opportunities to get lost. And from that, I learned to be a good wayfinder. And if I take that, if I sort of zoom that out a little bit, or zoom the lens out on that a little bit, what's happened is I've become a very good wayfinder in myself. Like I wrote something down that my coach Andrew Moss, he was my guest in episode 399. He is, as we speak, beginning his around the world on a boat. He's sailing around the world for the next year, and when we got to talking about that, I was really interested in something that he said. He has been saying, which is that he doesn't know what's on the other side of this year at sea. And he's giving himself that time to discover it. And what he literally said was, whatever this turns out to be is going to give me the guidance and the inspiration to know what's next. And like, to me, that's what this inner wayfinding has been. Like I now recognize what I used to do, which is I used to try and control the events. I would try to control the outcomes. I would do it, I would say to myself, like, it better not rain Saturday because that's going to ruin my day out with, so and so or whatever. Like, my kid better not do this, or, it's going to end up in this outcome for them. And like, oh gosh, not just my kid, but like everybody around me, like the people that I loved, what I was doing was I was sort of imposing my wishes on them simply by coming from a place of wanting an outcome for them, that without even consulting them about whether they wanted it for themselves. And at the same time, because this is what we're sort of conditioned to do in our society, others were doing that to me, and I was allowing it to knock me off my place of center. And wayfinding and understanding that whatever something turns out to be, whatever I'm doing now, however this ends up, is going to be, I love this quote so much, is going to give me the guidance and the inspiration to know what's next. So every morning I've been taking a walk. It's more of a hike, or I guess a walk run. And I've been sort of saying to myself, like, okay, I've been playing with this idea in bigger ways too, but this is one smaller way that it's shown up. Like, I'll say to myself, I have already created this walk. It's already happened. And now I get to watch it unfold, this fabulous walk. Or like, I mean, you could, this beautiful day, this amazing meal, this year of my life. Like, you can do it in so many ways. You can choose a point in the future and say, like, I've already created this thing that I want to have come to pass. And now I get to watch it unfold. And it's a way of being objective. It takes me out of myself. It makes me feel like now I'm just an observer. This is fun. I get to see what happens. And that is a much better way of wayfinding for me, because I'm not trying to control outcomes. I'm not worrying about the future. Instead, I'm just enjoying watching it all happen. And I'm watching myself do things that my past self would not have done, because I would have been too in the moment, too judgmental, too upset, too worried, too anxious, too whatever, name your feeling. And so that is the kind of mechanism by which I've become an awesome wayfinder. I consult my present self and my heart, whereas I used to just wish that things would happen, or feel so oppressed, pressured. I mean, by my own thoughts, like that I wouldn't try something, I wouldn't do something. And I don't do that anymore. Like, I'm enjoying this kind of wayfinding. So and what's good about that, I think that gets into the kind of the last thing that I really wanted to talk about here, which was the changing roles that uh I've been in since I came home. When I am not worrying and inviting other people to not worry about me or where I'm going or what I'm doing, helping them understand. Like, one really small measure of this, the car that I drive needed an oil change recently, and like I was just forgetting and forgetting and forgetting. And poor Ben was like, it was so on his mind. He was like, like, if we don't get this car's oil changed like tomorrow, this was a couple of weeks ago, he was like, really bad things can happen to an engine, which of course I know it's just hasn't been on my radar, right? And he was really, 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 really worrying about it. So just recently, the oil did get changed. And I said to him, we had this conversation about like, how long between oil changes should there be? And like, he was sort of helping me understand, or reminding me, I guess, that it's really more about mileage than time. Like, in the pandemic, nobody drove cars in our family for any, like, we put on, I don't know, 1,000 miles in like 2 years or something, because we just didn't go anywhere. And now we're getting back into driving. And so it's good to remember. So I said to him, I want you to know that you do not have to worry about this anymore. It's my car. It's, like, I'm taking responsibility for this. And what I'm doing is I'm putting a post-it note on the calendar, and I am going to call. Like, I'm going to make this point. You do not need to worry about this anymore. Like, that's the sort of, I mean, that's one tiny example, but I use it because things have changed in really, really deep ways. And that is showing up in like the things I'm taking responsibility for that I sort of never did, because it feels like the right thing to do, you know? And that is where sort of wayfinding and roles interact for me. Um, I've noticed that. So Andrew, my coach, asked me this question. Maybe I'd been home for a week, and he was like, "I'm really curious. How has reentry been for you?" And I was like, oh boy, like it's been so interesting. There's a lot that I just won't engage on anymore. Like I just have no interest in talking about. And so I rather than feeling like pulled into a conversation that I don't want to be in, I just don't respond, or I will take the conversation in another direction, or walk away or something like. Whereas I used to get pulled into things and didn't feel like I was always coming from integrity. Now I do, right? So and one way to think about it, and so just before I left, there were, some members of my family that were having some really big things happening in their lives. Not necessarily things that could be looked upon as like scary things, or changing, or like, how do I tell people about this, those sorts of things. And I began to realize that what I had been doing was worrying about them figuring stuff out. That was why I would be like, well, you should do this, or like that's why the dashboard indicator lights came up, because I wanted my family to know that when I was giving them advice, that was a sign that something was going on inside of me. And they could look at that as a dashboard indicator light and say to me, is something going on for you? Are you okay? And I could consult myself and say, this has happened. I've been like, nope, I'm not. And I'm going to go and figure it out. So thank you for highlighting that. I do not like to give people advice that is unsolicited. Like, right. I don't want to just be telling you what to do. And so that was me worrying about others figuring their stuff out. And I got on a plane and was gone for long enough that they, like, I wasn't there to help them figure stuff out, or to tell them what to do or whatever. Like, right. They could not rely on me at all. I was literally not there. And what happened was they figured stuff out. Like, all of those things had been handled by the time I got home. And not only that, but handled with love and confidence. And like the sort of homemaking routines had changed, because 3 weeks, you can't just coast for 3 weeks, right? Like, they started doing things that with me there, they would never have started doing, because I was doing those things. And um, I came to think of it as celebrating them figuring it out. And, realizing that, like, worrying about other people figuring their stuff out, a way to look at that is, it's me not valuing myself as much as I value others, and not giving myself the care that everyone deserves, basically. And me celebrating them figuring their stuff out is because that there are boundaries that need to be set. Like, in fact, the other night it happened that somebody was asking for some support. Something was going on in my family, and somebody wanted some support. And I was like going to bed. I was basically coming out to say goodnight when this person started really wanting to talk about this, and needing to talk about it. And I said, listen, I love you, and I am celebrating you figuring this out, because I need to go to bed. I am not in a good place within myself. Like, basically, I will be telling you what to do if you are needing me for support right now. And, I think one thing I've been thinking about since that happened is, um, if it's an emergency, right? If it's something really, really, really crucial, major, desperate, of course, I am going to support on that, right? Like, that's not about like, well, good night, I'll see you in the morning. Like that, there are times where that needs to be set aside, but those times are way fewer than what was happening, or what I was seeing before I left. Like, the time, like, I used to not be able to distinguish between an actual emergency and, like, somebody being able to figure their stuff out, but relying on me, uh, because, of all the reasons, right? So me celebrating them figuring their stuff out is also me valuing my self-care and my well-being as just as important as anybody else's. And that was a huge, huge, huge shift. Um, And it's really all sort of merged into this lovely sort of blur of experience. And I'm fascinated with that. Like I now just operate so differently and so joyfully. I'm doing things that feel exhilarating rather than scary. And 201, they've come back joyfully, and like things that I used to be scared to actually try, I'm now discovering are awesome and fun, and this is physically, this is mentally, this is, you know, in my professional world. Like it's just such fun to um live like this. I guess maybe that's a good way of saying it. And that I think is where I'm going to wrap it up. I learned a lot, and the reentry has been so fascinating. And I do feel like I've integrated it. There's always, this is not just, there's always going to be more to learn, right? Like I know I'll get out 6 months from now and I'll be like, oh, wow, like that is a thing too. And then on and on and on. The way I look at it is we're sort of on an ascending spiral, and I'm at a different place on the spiral now than I was, even when I got home a couple months ago, even when it hasn't been a couple of months. No. Yeah, it has. It's been a couple of months. But even a year ago, right? And all the time before that, I'm at a different place. I'm on a really interesting learning journey, and I'm glad that you're here with me. I want to share. Um, I'm still doing these. I have been doing these wonderful uh, and this is really interesting because remember what I was saying before about like creating something and then watching it come to pass? Well, this is literally happening right now because I'm recording this episode in August. And when it airs, which will be in September, it'll be coming out just a week or two prior to one in a series of conversations I'm having about what I learned about myself solo crossing Northern England. And in September, it is about, let me consult my calendar. Mm. Oh, wow. I learned that I now know my truth. That is what we're going to be talking about a little bit after this episode comes out. Those conversations are going to take place on Tuesday, the 26th of September and Wednesday, the 27th of September. So, and I don't have a bit link for that in this moment, but I will when it's out. So you'll be able to look down in the show notes. And you can always go to there's a collection in Eventbrite. I'm doing these events through Eventbrite. There's a collection of events that I made, which is all of these conversations about what I've learned crossing England, about myself. And the link is bit.ly/I learned collection is where you can find all of those dates. That link is in the show notes. And I think right now, all is left for me to do is to say thank you, thank you, thank you so much for being here with me today. It means so much. I'm joyful and excited that you are along for this ride. And I'm looking forward to, I don't know, being with you again next time. And I'm grateful to you for this space that we create together. I'm also extremely grateful to the 26-time winner of the Husband of the Year Award, Benjamin Kolp. He is our head engineer over here, and he's been teaching me to do a little bit of the mixing myself, and that's been a lot of fun. And I'm grateful to him for a lot more than that. He is an amazing dude, and I'm very, very fortunate to have him in my life. Thank you so much, my love, for being along on this ride with me. And thank you so much too for being here. I'm glad and grateful to have been with you today, and I look forward to seeing you next time. Bye.